Hi there guys, I'm Ginny of the YouTube channel Finickety Reader. Today I'm going to tell you about 3 books that I finished on Wednesday. I didn't talk about them in my Wednesday video because by then I'd spent the whole day reading and I was just finished. And yesterday I spent 12 hours reading my university textbooks and going to a tutorial to talk about our next essay. I got back at 11:30 at night and by then I was just knackered. But today is a good day! The books I finished were Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, Angry White People by hsiao-hung, which I've already talked about a bit, and Stig of the Dump by Clive King. Since comparing and contrasting worked pretty well last time, I thought I'd try it again. You might be saying, "Hey Ginny, those books were the same genre, and these are all different." And yes, I would agree with you, because I wrote that. But 2 of these books, Angry White Men and Metamorphosis, deal with an interesting problem. Both books talk about a fundamental misunderstanding of your own situation. You've probably heard a bit about Metamorphosis. A guy turns into a beetle, and his family react pretty badly to that. Understandable, really. But what's really interesting about this story is the perspective of Gregor. Gregor may have turned into an insect, but that's the least of his problems. He's missed the first train, he'd have to rush to catch the next one, and he could take a sick day, but the boss wouldn't like that. Gregor goes through the story fundamentally misunderstanding the people around him, and as the story goes on you start to see how much he has missed, and the lies people around him have been telling, but Gregor remains ignorant. Written badly, such a gormless character might come across as annoying, and I do wonder why he is the way he is. But his care for his family and his hard-working nature really compensate for his trusting naivety. Gregor means well, and he's been supporting his whole family for a long time without help. He feels so proud of himself for that, but he just doesn't see that it's not returned. So how does this relate to Angry White Men? In this book, hsiao-hung explores the world of a right-wing nationalist group called the English Defence League by going to Luton, where it all started. The racism, bigotry, and secrecy she discovers in that world are exactly what you'd expect. But what's more interesting is the amount of people who are willing to talk with her and don't seem to connect their anti-Muslim, anti-immigration views with the hurt and damage that they cause. These white, working-class men feel like victims, and to a certain extent they are. But when they act on these feelings of victimization and alienation, they turn against the minorities in their community, rather than the causes of their pain. And that makes this feel even more doomed. You know that this will never end, as long as people can't see what their real problems are. Until then, we're stuck with a terrible situation, not just for immigrants, but for people who were born in this country with a different heritage, and anyone who wants to live in a multicultural, accepting society. If you've been listening to my previous podcasts, cast your mind back to Hardwiring Happiness. That book spent some time talking about how ongoing stress damages the hippocampus and shrinks it. Ongoing stress like being unable to find a job or support your family. What shrinkage of the hippocampus does is it damages your ability to put things in perspective or see the full picture, and it's that perspective that we need to battle bigotry. It's not coincidence that when times get bad, we turn on each other and have to save our energy for our family and those close to us. I'm already a bit of a socialist, but this book makes me believe even more that we need to take care of those less fortunate than ourselves, if not because of altruism, then for the good of society. If I have one little niggle with this book, it would be with the pacing. It feels a bit slow at times, and when Pei's going through statistics, it can be really repetitive. I would have preferred graphs. These books both explore the need to matter and the need to be valued in very different ways. I feel like the attitudes explored in Metamorphosis wouldn't really work in non-fiction. But the feelings in Angry White Men are underrepresented in English fiction, simply because the world of books often centers on middle-class values and problems. Makes sense. That's who editors and publishers usually are. Maybe that's something we should be taking into account when we plan our diverse reading? Well, after such a downer, I needed something upbeat. I chose Stig of the Dump because it was something I vaguely remembered from my childhood. I think I read an extract from it somewhere or other, and I've been familiar with the name and the synopsis for a long time, but I didn't read it when I was the right age to. This is a children's book written in the 60s. What would be middle grade in America? To give you a brief summary, when Barney goes to visit his grandmother, Everyone tells him not to play at the edge of the chalk pit the locals use as a dump because it's not stable, but of course he does it anyway. And, as you'd expect with that kind of setup, as he's leaning over the edge, the ground beneath him gives way and he falls. He falls through the roof of a being called Stig, possibly a caveman, and the rest of the book is a series of adventures. I do think this book has held up pretty well for something 50 years old, even if it does contain some scenes of hunting with hounds that would now be illegal. It portrays people from both extremes of the English economic spectrum, with both sympathy and humour, and Barney's sister Lou comes across pretty well, even if she only comes to the forefront later in the book. The only problem I had with this book, it can feel a bit disjointed in the middle, when no one else believes in Stig, and it's just Barney and Stig helping to fix each other's problems. Some of these incidents feel a bit contrived, but this is a children's book. Over the next weekend, I'm looking forward to reading about Irish history to help me with my next university assignment, but I will be making sure I read something fun as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Talk to you later.